We all share that same big question. How can we live a longer, healthier life? But let's face it, the amount of information flying around, it's like trying to drink from a fire hose, right? Super overwhelming, often contradictory. So for you, we're going to try and cut through some of that noise today. Our mission for this deep dive, it's really to pull out the most important, actionable bits directly from Dr. Michael Greger's massive work, his book, How Not to Age. I mean, just imagine someone sifting through, what was it, over 20,000 scientific papers on aging.
Yeah, it's an incredible undertaking.
That's exactly what Dr. Greger did. And we're here to basically give you the highlights, the core findings.
And what's really fascinating here, and what Dr. Greger digs into is this profound idea. Sure, aging is like the biggest risk factor for most killer diseases. You could argue it's the leading cause of death, really. But this is the key, the rate at which we age. That might actually be something we can change.
We can influence it.
Exactly. The idea that we can affect the very pace of our own decline, well, it's pretty revolutionary. So our goal is to unpack those key findings, those actionable details Dr. Greger found, and show you how.
Okay, so let's dive in. First up, what Dr. Greger calls the modern dilemma of aging. He poses this really thought-provoking question. If we manage to live longer, is it going to be what he calls a Pyrrhic victory? A win that costs too much, just marked by decline. Because his research paints a pretty stark picture. Only about, 18% of people actually experience successful aging?
18% is low.
Yeah. And the vast majority, somewhere between 55 and 98% of older folks, face multimorbidity.
Meaning multiple chronic diseases at once.
Right. Often 4 or more by the time they hit 85. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And this reality, well, it stands in pretty sharp contrast to where some industries focus their energy. Dr. Greger points out that even though aging is the top cause of death, you see big pharma often spending big bucks marketing, unproven stuff.
Sure.
Things like cosmeceuticals or those beauty drinks you sometimes see pushed by soda companies. It's not really research into actual solutions. And he notes that a lot of the big supplement brands, they're actually owned by drug companies, kind of preying on our hope for a quick fix. So it raises that question, why aren't we laser focused on what actually works, especially when the evidence is mounting?
That's a really powerful point about priorities. But then Dr. Greger found something kind of amazing when he looked at how the researchers were framing the problem, didn't he?
He really did. That was a spark for the book, actually. He came across this consensus paper from top anti-aging researchers. They listed these essential pathways for fighting aging, pathways they figured would need new drugs to tackle.
Sure, yeah.
But as Dr. Greger went through that list, he had this moment. Every single one, every single pathway they listed could potentially be regulated through diet.
Wow. Every single one.
Every single one. That's the core insight, really. Food, not just pills, holds this immense power.
Okay, now that's where it gets really interesting. So let's dig into that. What are some of these crucial pathways inside our cells that diet can actually influence?
Right. So inside our bodies, Dr. Greger really breaks down how diet affects these key cellular processes. He focuses a lot on two main ones. First, there's something called AMPK. You can think of it like your cell's conservation mode switch.
Conservation mode.
Yeah. When it gets flipped on, it basically tells your cells, okay, time to tighten the belt, burn some stored fat for energy, focus on repair. It's like hitting a reset button.
Okay, AMPK, the reset switch. What's the second one?
The second is autophagy. This is basically your cell's built-in recycling and garbage disposal system.
Autophagy, like self-eating.
Exactly. It breaks in old, junky cell parts, clears out damaged stuff that builds up as we age. And here's the crucial link. AMPK turns on autophagy.
Okay. So activating AMPK helps kickstart that cellular cleanup.
Precisely. It triggers that vital cleaning and reset process.
So if these are our body's natural anti-aging tools, how does what we eat switch them on, or I guess switch them off?
It's surprisingly direct. You can activate AMPK and thus autophagy with something as simple as like a splash of vinegar, or your body can make its own acetic acid, which is the active component in vinegar. When you eat fiber, your gut bacteria ferment it into acetic acid. That gets absorbed and helps flip the AMPK switch.
Okay, so fiber is key there. What turns it off?
Well, things that impair autophagy include saturated fat and animal protein. These tend to activate another pathway called mTOR.
mTOR?
Yeah, mTOR is kind of the opposite signal. It tells cells to grow, build, store energy, often shutting down that cleaning process, autophagy. So a diet high in saturated fat and animal protein can effectively sideline your cellular cleanup crew.
Oh.
And even some carbs like French fries or potato chips, because it's a chemical called acrylamide that forms during high heat cooking.
Acrylamide, right.
That can also inhibit autophagy. Our ancestors, eating maybe once a day or fasting sometimes, they were constantly hitting these beneficial switches, not like our modern world with constant meals where the cellular trash can just pile up.
That's a powerful image, the trash piling up. Okay, what about specific compounds? Are there things we can eat that directly boost longevity?
Absolutely. Another key one Dr. Greger highlights is spermidine. It directly promotes longevity and autophagy.
Okay.
Problem is, our natural levels drop quite a bit, like more than half by our 50s.
Oh.
But here's the good news. Dietary intake makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
People getting the most spermidine, maybe 12 milligrams a day or more, had a death rate equivalent to being almost 6 years younger.
5.7 years younger. That's significant.
It really is. It was replicated too. So top source, tempeh, gold medal, just one 8-ounce package can hit that 20 milligram mark.
Okay. What else?
Mushrooms get the silver. Interestingly, plain white button mushrooms often have more than the fancier kinds.
Huh. Good to know.
And also whole wheat bread, soy foods, beans, lentils, whole grains. They're all good sources.
Okay, so spermidine is a helper. Let's talk about the bad guys, these zombie cells. Dr. Greger discusses senescent cells. What are they and why do we want them gone?
Zombie cells is a perfect description. They're cells that have basically stopped dividing, but they refuse to die off properly. They just hang around.
And they cause problems.
Big problems. They spew out this cocktail of inflammatory chemicals that damages healthy tissues around them. When we're young, our immune system mops them up pretty well.
But not so much as we age.
Right. More and more accumulate. But here's the critical thing Dr. Greger found. Clearing out even some of these zombie cells can make a huge difference. It can delay tumor growth, slow down age-related organ damage.
So how do we clear them, besides things like exercise or eating less?
Well, those help, definitely.
Right.
But he points to a specific plant compound, a phytonutrient called
quercetin. Where do we find that?
It's concentrated in things like onions, kale, apples. Researchers identified it as a natural senolytic, basically, a zombie cell destroyer.
Wow. Onions and apples fighting zombie cells. That's amazing. Okay, speaking of how food impacts us at a fundamental level, let's talk epigenetics. That sounds complicated.
It can be, but Dr. Greger sums it up really well. Genes load the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger.
I like that.
Epigenetics is basically about how our genes get switched on or off. It doesn't change your DNA sequence, but it controls which genes are active.
And diet plays a role here, too.
A huge role. His research shows the lifestyle factor most consistently linked to slowing aging even more than exercise is how many fruits and vegetables you eat, specifically measured by carotenoid levels in your blood.
So more colorful plants, slower aging.
Seems that way. And conversely, meat is the food most consistently linked to accelerating aging epigenetically.
How does that work?
Well, for example, vegans show different methylation patterns. These are like little chemical tags on the DNA that control genes. In vegans, these patterns tend to unmuzzle tumor suppressor genes and DNA repair enzymes.
Unmuzzle, like letting the guard dogs off the leash.
Exactly. It lets them fight back more effectively against things like cancer, which might partly explain why vegans tend to have lower cancer rates overall.
That's a fantastic explanation. Okay, staying with diet. Advanced glycation end products, AGs. They sound nasty. What are they?
They are pretty nasty. They're toxic compounds that build up in our tissues as we age. Think stiff arteries, wrinkled skin, that kind of thing.
And how do they form?
Heat is a big factor, especially during cooking. But the really surprising thing Dr. Greger points out is that the amount of AGs in our body seems to be less about what our body naturally makes and more about how many we actually eat.
So we're literally eating these things.
To a large extent, yes. The research showed the top 15 foods highest in AGs per serving were mostly poultry. Oven-fried chicken breast was number 1.
Wow, okay. Not what I would have guessed.
Right. And high-fat, high-protein foods generate more AGEs during cooking than sugary ones do.
Even more than sugar.
Yeah. And get this. Methylglyoxal, which is a really potent creator of AGEs, it actually doubled in people's blood after just a couple of weeks on a low-carb Atkins diet, even though their blood sugar was probably low.
That's totally counterintuitive. So how do we lower these AGEs?
Dr. Greger says just cutting your dietary intake by half could literally help you live longer.
Okay, cutting intake by half, that sounds significant. Knowing they come from cooking and certain foods, what practical things can we actually do? Dr. Greger usually has some good tips.
He definitely does. Like for potatoes, he talks about his nip and nooth method. You basically pre-cook them, they eat them cold or reheat them later. This changes the starch structure, and it can lower how much they spike your blood sugar, the glycemic impact, by almost 40%.
Just from cooling them down.
Yeah. And another simple trick. Eat berries with your meals. They act as natural starch blockers, slowing down sugar absorption.
Berries as starch blockers? Interesting.
His overall message really boiled down to focus on foods that were grown, not heavily processed or, made in a factory.
Grown, not made. I like that. Okay, let's zoom in a bit more on fats and proteins. How do they specifically impact aging processes? What about something like fatty liver disease?
Right, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or NAFLD. It's actually become the leading cause of chronic liver disease now. Affects maybe 1 in 3 adults in the U.S.
1 in 3, wow. And it's not just sugar.
No, that's the common misconception. Dr. Greger's work highlights studies where saturated fat, think butter, cheese, increased liver fat by a whopping 55%.
55%.
Yeah, compared to about 33% from sugary foods and only 15% from unsaturated fats like pecans or olive oil. It really shifts the focus away from just blaming sugar.
That's a huge difference. And what about inflammation? We hear so much about inflammation driving aging.
Oh, the impact there is really profound. Dr. Greger cites studies showing just one meal high in saturated fat can double your levels of IL-6, which is a key inflammatory marker, within just 6 hours.
Doubled in 6 hours.
Yeah. And palmitic acid, which is the main saturated fat in meat and dairy, seems to directly trigger inflammation. Plus, saturated fat makes your gut leaky, allowing these things called endotoxins, bits of bacteria, to slip into your bloodstream really quickly within an hour, causing more inflammation.
Yikes. Okay, so what helps fight inflammation?
Well, nuts, for example, don't seem to increase inflammatory markers. And interestingly, putting half an avocado on a beef burger might actually blunt some of that inflammatory hit.
Avocado to the rescue.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And those richly colored fruits like pomegranates, red plums, anything with anthocyanins, they help burn inflammation down. And turmeric, even less than 1/10 of a teaspoon a day, shows potent anti-inflammatory effects.
Turmeric, okay. This all seems connected to our kidneys too, right? They're filtering everything. How does diet affect them?
Hugely. Dr. Greger explains that eating a lot of animal protein forces your kidneys to work much harder. It's called hyperfiltration, like they're stuck in overdrive.
Overdrive, okay.
But eating the same amount of protein from plants, it causes basically no extra stress.
That's a stark difference. Why?
Well, what's really fascinating is if you give someone an anti-inflammatory drug along with the animal protein meal, that hyperfiltration effect disappears.
Ah, so it suggests inflammation is the key driver of that kidney stress from animal protein.
Exactly. It really shows how differently our bodies handle these inputs and the kind of hidden stress certain foods put on our organs over the long haul.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift to the gut. Dr. Greger talks a lot about the microbiome, our second brain. What are the key takeaways there for aging?
Oh, it's absolutely central. He points out that 75% of our stool by weight is just bacteria. Trillions of them doing vital jobs, boosting immunity, making vitamins.
75%, wow.
Yeah. But as we age, we often develop dysbiosis and unhealthy imbalance in those gut bacteria. And a big reason for that is we tend to eat fewer fiber-rich whole plant foods as we get older, or just in our modern diet generally.
So less fiber, unhappy gut bugs.
Pretty much. And he also raises a really concerning point about antibiotics.
In our food.
Yeah. Single servings of meat, milk, even eggs can contain enough antibiotic residues to actually encourage the growth of antibiotic-resistant bacteria in our own gut.
That's not good.
Not good at all. Then there's TMAO.
TMAO, right. That's linked to heart disease.
Yes, it's formed by gut bacteria from compounds found in animal products. But interestingly, some plant foods like pistachios and Brussels sprouts can actually help lower TMAO levels.
Okay, good to know.
Dr. Greger has this clever mnemonic, time to minimize intake of animal products to remember TMAO. And he uses this really strong analogy for the loss of fiber in our diets. He compares it to the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs, the Chicxulub impactor, for its devastating effect on our microbiome.
Wow, that's dramatic.
It underscores the importance.
Yeah.
And he stresses that fiber supplements just don't cut it like whole foods do. He actually recommends a 50-food challenge.
The 50-food challenge.
Yeah, try to eat 50 different types of plant foods in a week for diversity. Because intact grains and legumes are crucial. Their fiber protects the starch inside, letting it reach your colon to feed the good bacteria.
50 different plants a week. That sounds like a fun challenge. Okay, let's pivot to something people are always asking about. Supplements, pills, powders. Dr. Greger seems pretty skeptical based on his research.
He is, and for good reason. He found most people have this mistaken belief that supplements are, government approved for safety or effectiveness, or at least have to list side effects.
Which isn't true.
Nope. Thanks to a law passed in 1994, the DSHEA Act, the burden of proof isn't on the manufacturers. So buyer beware, basically.
And what did his research actually find about supplement benefits?
Alarmingly, most show zero benefit in terms of living longer. Worse, some large studies, meta-analyses, actually found that high doses of vitamin A, beta-carotene, and a certain type of niacin increase the risk of dying compared to a placebo.
Increased risk. Wow.
Yeah. There was even a big editorial in a major medical journal titled, "Enough is Enough. Stop wasting money on vitamin and mineral supplements." It basically said the case is closed. Focus on eating healthier, more plants instead of pills.
So are any supplements worthwhile?
Vitamin D seems to be the only one with some actual human evidence suggesting it might extend lifespan. But even then, it hasn't panned out for preventing or treating most specific conditions it's been tested for.
So mostly hype then.
A lot of it seems to be. He gives an example of a compound from the astragalus plant, marketed as TA65, for like $600 a bottle.
$600.
Yeah. But the main study was funded by the company selling it, and later they were charged with making false claims. It's a murky world.
Definitely sounds like it. Okay, to bring home the impact of food choices, Dr. Greger uses some really stark comparisons. What was that one about burgers and cigarettes?
Yeah, it's designed to make you think. His analysis suggests that in terms of lifespan reduction, eating one burger might be equivalent to smoking about 2 cigarettes, losing a microlife, as he puts it.
One burger equals 2 cigarettes. That's memorable. What about eggs?
Similarly, he found that eating just half an egg per day was associated with about a 7% increase in dying from any cause. So, roughly putting one egg in the same ballpark as one burger in terms of risk.
Wow. And processed meats.
That comparison is maybe even more striking. A daily serving of processed meat like bacon or sausage increases your risk of colorectal cancer by about 18%.
Okay.
He compares that to the risk of lung cancer from breathing secondhand smoke every day, which is around 15%.
Yeah.
So, similar magnitude of risk increase.
That really does put it into perspective, doesn't it?
It's meant to highlight how seemingly small daily choices can add up to significant health impacts.
Absolutely. Okay, so Dr. Greger takes all this vast research and boils it down to his anti-aging 8 core dietary principles. He really hammers home that diet is the #1 killer, right, globally.
He does. And crucially, it's not just about the bad stuff we eat too much of. 4 of the top 5 dietary risk factors for death are actually from not eating enough of the good stuff.
Not eating enough? Like what?
Like, not enough vegetables, he estimates eating more could save 1.5 million lives a year. Not enough nuts and seeds, maybe 2 million lives. Not enough fruit, 2.5 million. And the biggest one, not enough whole grains, potentially costing 3 million lives annually.
Incredible numbers.
Yeah, he argues salvation isn't necessarily in a new pill, but maybe just in eating more whole plant foods.
Okay, let's highlight a couple from his anti-aging 8. What about nuts? They used to get a bad rap for fat content.
Right, but Dr. Greger calls it a vindication for nuts. Eating them is linked to a lower risk of dying from more than half of our top 10 killer diseases.
Half of the top 10.
Yeah, the message is pretty clear. Eat nuts, live longer. They seem to literally add years to life, based on the evidence.
Yeah, nuts are in. What about specific veggies?
He emphasizes cruciferous vegetables, think broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts. They boost our natural detox enzymes, fight inflammation from pollution, even improve our immune response against viruses.
Broccoli power.
Totally. And just greens in general, eating leafy greens almost every day. One of the most powerful things you can do for longevity. Linked to potentially a 50% lower risk of dying over 12 years in some studies, even after accounting for other factors.
50% lower risk.
Yeah, and the nitrates in greens help improve artery function, lower blood pressure naturally.
We talked about inflammation. How do fruits, especially berries, fit in?
Berries are anti-inflammatory superstars. He explains our stomach kind of acts like a bioreactor, and when we eat meat, it can generate these harmful oxidized byproducts.
Okay.
But plant foods, on average, have something like 64 times more antioxidants than animal foods. 64 times. They help fight that oxidative stress.
Wow.
And the anthocyanins, those pigments in berries, they specifically help with blood sugar control, insulin sensitivity, artery function. They can even blunt some of the artery damage from smoking a cigarette.
That's amazing. And he singles out one superberry.
Yeah, amla, or Indian gooseberry.
Yeah.
He cites data suggesting it's the single most antioxidant-packed whole food on the planet.
Amla. Got it. It's just amazing how interconnected everything is. Dr. Greger seems to link diet to almost every aspect of health and aging.
He really does. It's about seeing the body as a whole system. For example, he talks about blood pressure.
Right.
He says having a normal salt intake leads to normal blood pressure, which then contributes to dying from normal causes, like heart attacks and strokes. And that normal blood pressure actually damages tiny blood vessels in the brain over time, causing microbleeds.
So normal isn't necessarily optimal.
Exactly. It makes you question the standard definitions. And it extends to things you might not expect,
Like what?
like hair loss. Male pattern baldness is actually linked to a higher risk of heart disease. Female hair loss can signal things like thyroid issues,
Even hearing.
even hearing. Age-related hearing loss is super common, but he points to studies of the Microbiome tribe in Africa.
Yeah.
They eat mostly whole grains, very little animal protein, have perfect blood pressure their whole lives, and they don't get age-related hearing loss.
Suggesting it's related to blood flow.
Yeah, the theory is that atherosclerosis, clogged arteries, affects the tiny vessels in the inner ear too.
Fascinating. What about joint health? Osteoarthritis.
Diet plays a role there too. Saturated fat seems to make osteoarthritis progress faster. But switching to a whole food, plant-based diet significantly improved pain and function in patients, even if they didn't lose weight.
That's hopeful for a lot of people. And sexual health.
Critically linked to blood flow. He uses the phrase survival of the firmest.
Huh.
Both erectile dysfunction and female sexual function depend heavily on healthy arteries. So an artery-friendly plant-based diet is fundamental. He also flags BPA from plastics and can as being linked to declining male sexual function.
Okay, good to know. And what about skin, the visible signs of aging?
Air pollution plays a role,
Oh.
and specifically PAH's polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which you get from grilling meat, for instance, are linked to skin aging.
Grilling meat ages your skin.
Seems like it. But plant foods fight back. Things like spinach, kale, apples, rosemary, tomato paste, they can help boost collagen, improve elasticity, reduce wrinkles, and even provide a sort of inside-out sunscreen effect.
Inside-out sunscreen, I like that. And you mentioned the protein dogma earlier.
Right, it's a big one. Dr. Greger points out that restricting protein is the only intervention known to block all 11 identified aging pathways.
All 11, yet we're told to eat more protein.
Exactly, it's a paradox. But many expert longevity researchers actually advise cutting down on protein, especially animal protein, if you want to live long.
That really flips the script.
Yeah.
Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, the overwhelming message seems to be the incredible power of our diet and lifestyle. Dr. Greger's work just reinforces again and again that even making changes later in life, midlife, can dramatically cut your risk of dying prematurely. It really feels like it's never too late.
It really does. And connecting this to the bigger picture, Dr. Greger makes this interesting point about research ethics. He says the ultimate study, say, on lifestyle and cognitive health, can't really be done ethically. You can't randomly assign people to smoke for 30 years or get head injuries just to prove the link definitively.
Right, of course not.
But, he argues, just because we can't do that perfect unethical study, it shouldn't stop doctors from making reasonable recommendations based on the strong evidence we do have. Which leaves you, the listener, with a pretty important question, I think. When we're talking about foods that are generally known to be healthy anyway, what level of evidence do you really need to make a change?
That is a really powerful thought to end on. What level of evidence do you need? We really encourage you to chew on that. Reflect on what you've heard today. Think about how even small informed shifts in your diet and lifestyle could make a huge difference to your health span. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and definitely continue your own deep dive into these fascinating topics.